Hello everyone, Jacques here from Dapper Shaves. We're going to do a little talk about natural whetstones, but before we get there, first of all I want to thank all my new subscribers, those of you that find my information useful. It does make a difference to this channel, so I appreciate that. So today we've got stones here. We're not going to own anything, we're not going to shave, but we are going to talk about what's important when you consider buying stones. That's the first section, and that might be the longer part of the conversation. And then secondly, I'm going to share some suggestions. And I say suggestions as there's no real right or wrong with honing, and I encourage everybody to try and explore as much as they can, but I've got some suggestions on things not to do or things you should focus on when you hone razors. So the first 3 points I want to mention. So first of all is, don't trust your eyes alone when judging stones, or the stamps they've got, or the color they have, or the appearance they have. Those are just all indications and essentially doesn't mean a lot until you've put steel on the stone. Moreover, if you want to buy stones from someone, I suggest you do it with somebody that allows you to return stones, like a warranty. So that if the stone is not to your liking, that you can send it back, obviously within certain parameters. And then the third thing is, if capable, to test the stone yourself. So if you're buying in Japan or from a location remotely, that's not going to be possible. However, if you've got a relationship with the person and the guys that know what they're doing will definitely help you, you can ask them what you're looking for in the stone, and they can demonstrate that to you in a video or talk about it to give you that insight. And then secondly, fourthly, if you get a stone which doesn't perform the way you want to, remember, there's many other things that need sharpening, like tools, kitchen knives, and so forth. So it might not be suitable for that specific task you were looking for, but it excels at doing something else you might have a need for. So just consider that. More things to consider is the efficiency of the stone. What do you want to achieve with it, and how long is it going to take to achieve it with that stone? If you're a professional, that is important. As an example, you don't want to spend a day trying to hone somebody's razor. It's not time efficient. Secondly is cost, the cost of these stones. And people will go and say, yes, these stones are, especially Japanese stones, are significantly expensive. And yes, they are. However, even a thin stone will last you a decade, a lifetime, not a decade, will last you a lifetime, and most likely that of your children. You're not going to finish up a stone, trust me. And then the other thing is cutting efficiency. So I am going to show you how I evaluate it after a little bit of talk. So we'll talk about cutting efficiency. All right, so when we started, the first thing I said is, don't trust your eye in appearances, stone markings, names, and so forth. So I've got 3 Nakayama Asagi stones here, different sizes, and they're all fantastic performers. But before we talk about these stones, I quickly want to describe to you how Japanese mines are spread across Japan and how they classified, and some industry perceptions, if I can put it that way. So first of all there's essentially 3 forms of mountain geology, and they are referred to as Nauri. I'll put some references in when I remember. So there's Aishishi Nauri, Shu Ishi Nauri, and Hankushi Nauri. And within each of these geological layers, there can be a variety of them in each of these sections. So that's just as a little bit of background. So the mines in Japan is essentially split into the eastern mines and the western mines. And the eastern mines are referred to as Higashimon, and the western mines is referred to as Nishimon. And how you determine, what's east or west is Mount Otago. So everything east of Mount Otago is the eastern mines, Higashimon, and on the western side, the equivalent. So the eastern mines are referred to as, some of the better mines, more quality stones. So mines like Nakayama will come up, Azuko, Shiroto, Kizuyama, Okudo. So these are all quite famous stones. And then on the western side, there's mines like Haka, Tanba, Ohira, Shinden, Ashi, many others. What I want to get at is generally, or not generally, stones from Nakayama, the well-known stones, are significantly more expensive than stones from the other mines. Now, what you've got to remember is that not all stones coming from one mine will be all fantastic. There's bad stones, good stones in all of the mines. And when I said don't stare into stamps and mine information, this is what I'm referring to. When people say, I want to find a nice finisher, and you ask somebody in the industry, I can tell you they go Nakayama. Get yourself a Nakayama Asagi, or get yourself a Kita from Nakayama. And they are all wonderful stones, but as I say, they can also be awful stones within those mines. So don't just look into those things. Stones are categorized, first of all, so they'll give you the mine, they'll tell you it's a Nakayama, and then they'll give you the strata or the layer it comes from, the appearance as an example. These are Asagi, so they've got these grey bluish colors in them. The appearance, so if they're yellow, it's called the Kita. If they have got these black marks in, it's referred to as Karasu, and so forth. So, and then you get the stone hardness. And the stone hardness is indicated from a level 1 to a level 5, where level 1 is very soft, and the level 5 or level 5 plus is very hard. So if you want to maybe translate that slightly differently with regards to granularity, level 1 would be rough. Level 3 would be standard, and then level 5 would be very fine. So that's how stones are, Japanese stones are marked, labeled, and sold. Now, we said 3 Nakayama stones. I quickly want to show you the first one. This one's got, I don't know, people will refer to this as maybe some old saw markings. It's not a modern machine with that, and they would go, this is a fantastic stone. And make no mistake, the stone is fantastic, but again, all of these stones from the mines were taken out around 1960s. They emptied the mine and they stored those things. Those mines were closed in 65. So It's stored, and as and when the demand comes up, they'll take out stockpiles and they'll shape them into the size and shape and then sell them. So if it was done in the 60s, it's maybe old. If it's more modern, you would see a modern cut on there. But that wouldn't determine if it's a good or old stone. Maybe the old stones were the bad ones, and the new stones which was taken out lost the better ones. So don't fall in that trap about what they look about. So this stone, you'll see, has got the Nakayama stamp on, but it's got that little symbol with a circle on, and that indicates that this is a Kato stone. So Kato owned the Nakayama mine. So this is one of the first stones that came out. This is a fantastic stone and is really a great finisher. Hard as hell. I'm going to put this one down. So this one is a thicker one. It's finer than this stone, and it's slightly softer. And it's a fantastic stone. So I can sell this stone to you at a fortune, and everybody will be happy. I would have my money, and you would have a fantastic stone. However, this is not a Nakayama. This is Iwatani. You can see the Kyoto Whetstone Association stamp on there, and the Iwatani my name. So guys, once again, don't fall for stamps. So I just needed to put in that one there. And then this one, also a very nice one, however, also not a Nakayama. In fact, this is a Zulu Grey. It's a South African stone, sedimentary stone, also quite hard. I'm still trying to understand the stone, so we'll do a show and tell on that at some point in time. Okay, so we've talked about not trusting your eyes. So I want to quickly show you how I go about evaluating stones. One other thing you've got to remember before we continue, I'm speaking about Japanese stones, but it applies for all other natural stones. And the other one that really lies close to my heart is the black Arkansas. Okay, it's a black Arkansas, and that's all it is. It is not a blue black. It is not a surgical black. These are all descriptions people came up with. Blue black, dark stones have got a blue tint to them. And this one, under the right light circumstances, you'll find some blue in there. But people go, oh yeah, I've got a blue black stone, and so that is that blue black is fantastic. So all blue blacks are fantastic. Stop falling into those traps. Get a good quality stone, like from Dan's or from a reputable Japanese guy, and move on. Forget about the rest of the stuff. Quickly, moreover on stamps, what I should show you, here is a stone. It's also a Iwatani, but you'll see this is more the typical Iwatani color, the more greenish, freshly stamped. Kyoto Whetstone Association, Iwatani, and the length of the stone. And you'll see here, it also looks more like a modern cut on here. In any case, if you're going to start using this stone, and we will at some point in time, these stamps are going to disappear. They're not going to be there anymore. So what then? So don't fall into the traps for just buying stones. Understand how they perform, if they meet your requirements, and then get yourself the stone. So let us maybe use this stone as an example. I've never used it. I have got an Iwatani, just a smaller one. This is a customer stone, and he asked me to evaluate it. So let's do this on this video. So when you look at how the guys typically sell and demonstrate whetstones is, they'll put the stone down there, they'll make use of a Japanese knife or kiridashi, And the reason for that is it's all about the polishing capabilities and the scratch pattern. So what they'll do is they'll take the knife, they'll take the kiridashi or whatever they've got, and what they'll do is they'll perform some strokes on there, and as you can see there, immediately a lot of swarf, and then you can go and look at the scratch pattern and understand how the stone polish. Now I use the word polishing specifically because people sometimes confuse what they see in the polishing process with the amount of swarf that comes off with cutting capability. And that is not true. And I want to demonstrate this. So a kiridashi or Japanese knife has got a softer outer clad, which is the front side, yes, and the hard quality steel is on the side. So, if I put the knife down and I hit the hard steel, it is going to take a very long time before there's swarf forming, and I'm using a lot of pressure. Okay, there's a little bit. If I hit the softer clad to polish that area, you will immediately see it cuts the softer steel a lot quicker. There we go. So what I do is I use a standard baseline for doing these things. And what I do is I use a known steel hardness because I don't know what the other people use. So when you buy a stone from somebody, tell them to use it if you want to see cutting performance on a hard piece of steel. So as an example, this is Spyderco. This steel I think is, is 60 Rockwell. It's not the hardest, but at least I know the number. And so how I test, I know there's no softer ironclad or something on here. It's a known hardness. I put the bevel flat down and then I work the stone. And then I can get an understanding of the cutting capability. Not with something that is potentially softer. So that's one of the ways I evaluate the stone. The other one is, so from this you can understand the polish, this process, and you can get the understanding of the cutting capability. You won't get the hardness, but generally the hardness descriptions of these stones when you buy them are quite accurate. But what you can do, especially if you've got a known source, like I know, where's this Iwatani? This is 4.5 roughly. This Iwatani, which I filled you with the Nakayama impression, is also a 4.5 roughly, but it's slightly harder than this. It's not a 5, so I call this a 4.5. And what you do is you rub the stones together and you see which one abrades the other and scratches. And that way you are going to determine the hardness. Now you need to spend some time here. These stones are similarly colored, so it's not as simple as just quickly rubbing it. Having said that, from what I've felt in senior, I've got a sneaky suspicion they are of similar hardness. But that we'll test at a different time. So that's evaluating or testing or understanding what the stone's capability is. So forget about the name. You want to understand how it polished, what its cutting capabilities are, what the hardness is, and if it's going to suit your needs. The other thing is, these are natural stones. Nobody knows what's in here. So in, I don't know, a year's time, maybe from lapping, you hit a spot and there's a toxic inclusion in there. These things can happen. It is unlikely, but these are natural stones. So please understand that these things can happen. If you look at the stone, it's very unlikely, and with any of these others. But it's not something that's not going to happen potentially. Okay, so let's get into the next bit. So I've briefly talked about, what you should consider buying, what to look for in a stone when you before you buying one. And the second component or part of this video we said was I want to share with you guys suggestions of things you should not be doing. Apologies, my water bottle and my side notes fell over. So when you start, a suggestion is do not start on a new razor or an expensive razor. Like anything else, it's a learning experience, and the more you practice, the more improvements you find. Also, you learn from your mistakes. So, find an old beater blade or buy a second-hand blade somewhere which you're not going to worry too much about, and use that for you to start and learn and experience and see what's going on. Other thing many folk do, mistakes they make, is using the wrong stone during the wrong part of the honing progression. So a simple example is, trying to set a bevel or do mid-range work on an Arkansas. Wrong stone for the step, you will eventually get there in 2 or 3 years' time. No joking. So use the right stone at the appropriate time, and once again, that's an experience thing. In my honing videos, I've got a lot of guides of the type of stone you should be using at each of the progressions. So go and have a look at those or ask questions and I'll address them for you. Stone maintenance is the other one. There's various ways of doing it. People like them 200 grit, other people dress them at 1000 grit. There's no right or wrong. Play, experiment and see what works for you. People will prefer convex stones. Some people prefer flat stones. There's no right or wrong. If you go down a path, you have to explore for yourself and get your own experience to understand what works. Listening to somebody else's story is at the end of the day only their experience, and yours are going to be different because you've got different requirements or different needs. Chamfered edges is the other big mistake people slip on. These edges need to be smooth, round, no hiccup, so there's no chance for the edge to bite, especially with straight razors, and cause a lot of damage. The other thing is spine pressure. Generally people, when they apply pressure, it's on the spine, and it should be slightly edge biased, otherwise you're going to wear away the spine. So there's two things that is controversial for me, at least. And the one is a convex hone, because it's the one extreme of the spectrum where you making the edge so thin that the longevity is really not worth it with the effort and the maintenance all on the stones. And the other one is on the other side of the Goldilocks spectrum, if I want to call it that, and that is adding tape on a spine. So one is you're making the edge as thin as possible, and the other one you're increasing the bevel beyond the design. So once again, play an experiment, come to your own conclusions about what you want to do. For me, it's a suggestion, and if you look in my videos, even for bevel sets, I don't use tape. If you've got the need to use tape, by all means, go ahead and do that. Single hand holding, and I haven't got a razor here, but this is typically the motion. And when you look at razors, especially razors that's been honed a lot, the razors are actually shaped this blade. If you look at vintage razors, they go from thick to thin. And the reason is the blades are all square and straight when they start. And they get a good edge at the heel where their hand is because there's good pressure. The toe does not necessarily always get that love. They shave. That side is not right, and then they start forcing the heel. And that is why razors wear like that when it's not honed by proper skilled people, because they start off with a mistake and then trying to correcting it, they keep chasing their tails until a straight razor's got a shape of this blade. Honing on the stabilizers. It's another mistake people do. They're so focused on what they're doing that they start riding the shoulder, it lifts the blade, you're hitting on the toe, you're changing the bevel geometry, your problem gets worse, and the razor is also not going to look aesthetically pleasing. Bread knifing and jointing. So bread knifing is, you'll see the industry, some of the people use the term, I killed the edge, and all they did was they pull the edge across the stone, which microscopic level just flattens the apex, and then they put it back. You're not going to learn that way because the bevel's already polished. It's something I do not recommend doing. Rather lift the spine off, do it on a coarse stone by hand like you would with a knife, and set part of the bevel, and then do the rest of your honing. Jointing is a similar thing where they essentially knock off the burr. On a synthetic stone, burrs is definitely a big problem, well, all aggressive stones. I prefer natural stones, especially Jnats with a thick slurry, because the likelihood of getting a burr or on there is unlikely, because that thick slurry keeps knocking it off. And then if you finish your progression correctly, you should not have a problem. At least for me. The other thing you'll see people mention and talk a lot or recommend is having, do 50 laps of this and then 20 of these, and then go to this stone and do 100 of this, or do a pyramid. There's all kinds of ways of getting things done. It's something I do not subscribe to, because you are counting sheep. And at the end of the day, you're not understanding, feeling, and getting the information you really need as you progress to learn. So I encourage you to not do that, and really try and feel and understand and take your time until you've got the knowledge. And then maybe develop your own thing. Especially a razor, bevels, is if you, even from factory or from the antique shop, they're not going to be set exactly the same, the one side as the other side. So just doing laps is not going to help you. You have to see and get that bevel even and work the very specific areas to get a straight, even edge. Then the next one is moving too quickly onto the next progression. chasing your progression. Bevel is iffy, and we move on to the next one, and that is the biggest mistake. Foundational work is the most important. People have got a fascination with finishers. I've got to have this stone and that stone, and they neglect the bevel setter as an example. Irrespective if that's a diamond plate or not a diamond plate, a synthetic or something like that. And what I mean by worship is really understanding and putting the right amount of working to get it done. To own a razor is 90% bevel set, 5% mid-range and polishing, and 5% tactile feel to get to incredible edges. Those are the numbers. The bulk of the work is laying the foundation. Another mistake people do is trying to learn to hone and shave at the same time. You are setting yourself up for disaster. So you can have that approach, but then at least get a razor from a professional with a reputation, so that you know what is good and what works, so you've got a benchmark to compare and work from to see how you're improving. On black Arkansas, you will hear a lot of people use the word burnishing. They'll run metal, axe, kiridashi or whatever across the stone, and essentially what they're doing is they're loading the stone up with steel so that it loses cutting capability. I'm not a big believer of that. In fact, I use an agura to keep the stone clean, fresh, and crisp, and that's how I do it. Once again, you won't know until you have gained your own experience. So don't take my word for it. You have to try and fix these things out for yourself. The other thing is to have some kind of magnification. A loop like this, or maybe one you can just clip on a phone. You don't need to spend a fortune, but you want to at least have some kind of low-end quality of the edge. And that's why I say low-end. You don't need to buy a fancy microscope. You just want to see what you can't see with your eye to some extent, so that you can understand if you're making progress or not. Then I've mentioned it in my ASMR video, which I dedicated to my little daughter. She's a stone addict. And that is the difference between a great edge and an exceptional edge. There's maybe a 5% difference between them, if that much. So there isn't something like a special stone or a special strop that's going to give you that 5% extra. It is paying attention to the little details and getting the pressure right and making sure you are pushing your abilities and the stone's abilities to the max. Folk buy stones and they do 98% of the work, and they shave and they go, it's great, but it's not fantastic. And then tonight I jump on the internet and I buy another stone, different stone, because that's going to make the difference. Difference comes in the interface between the blade and the stone. Yeah, and that's you. And the medium you're running it on. Many ways of killing a cat in honing. I've shown this. So I hope you've learned a couple of things from this. And I think that's fundamentally what I wanted to achieve, is to give you an idea of what to look for in a stone, especially a natural stone, what to consider and what not to do. So I hope that was useful. See you guys on the next video. Cheers.